So MLB.com just posted an article where they posed the biggest question for every single team in baseball heading into the 2024 season, and I thought it would be fun to react to it together. What's the biggest question for elite franchises like the Braves or the Dodgers? What about lowly franchises like the Rockies or the A's? We're going to ask those questions right now. The first question that we're going to ask: have you guys hit that subscribe button yet? We are so close to 500,000 subs. Okay, sorry, back to the video. The first team and its biggest question mark, the Toronto Blue Jays. Can Alek Manoah bounce back? And I fully agree with posing this as their biggest question, because I really think that Chapman, he's not going to come back, but I still feel like the rest of the lineup is going to hold up. This is the new and improved Alek Manoah. He's got a mullet. He's got a beard. It looks like he's dropped anywhere from 25 to 37. Why did I say 37? That's such a weird range. Sorry. You guys know what I'm trying to say. He's lost a lot of weight, and if he can get back to being a workhorse in that rotation, I feel like that is the bigger question to answer, as opposed to can Eduardo Escobar fill in the gap left behind by Matt Chapman if Matt Chapman doesn't come back to be their third baseman. Because to me, Varsho, he's going to bounce back. Vladdy's going to get luckier in 2024. So their offense to me is going to be fully cemented as one of the better offenses in baseball, but that rotation, it can be elite if Manoah is back to being Manoah. My first disagreement of the video, that was fast. They asked the question, will Jackson Holliday make the opening day roster? I don't feel like Jackson Holliday has to be on the team for them to make the playoffs and win the World Series in 2024. Would it be a nice cherry on top? Absolutely, but they're going to get there without him. Now, to me, the biggest question mark for the Orioles heading into next season is that rotation going to stay healthy. We now know that Kyle Bradish has an injury to his UCL. That is devastating news. We found that out a couple days ago. John Means, he is behind in his throwing program where he's trying to get back to being 100%. So if that rotation cannot stay healthy, they're going to have to really rely on Grayson Rodriguez and some of their up-and-coming prospects. They have the offense to absolutely rake and make the playoffs, just demolishing everyone. But the pitching rotation, can they hold up? To me, that's their number one question mark. So they didn't really pose a question for the Rays, but I kind of agree with their sentiment. Basically what they're trying to ask, can the newcomers replace the void that's been left by the guys that are no longer on the squad, whether that's because of free agency, whether that's because they traded them away, or whether their name is Wander Franco and they did it to themselves and off the field stuff? If you're asking me, I'd probably say that the biggest question mark for the Rays heading into 2024 is the health of that rotation, just like the Orioles. Can they get a Jeffrey Springs back by the All-Star break or a Drew Rasmussen? Can they improve Taj Bradley? Because he also had some injury concerns as well. So just like the Orioles, if that staff can stay healthy, I like their offense. I really like Junior Caminero. I 100% agree with the question that they asked about the Red Sox. How will the rotation piece together? Because I'm still asking that question. They lost out on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, even though they were trying to get him. Right now, their rotation is pretty much Lucas Giolito, Tanner Houck as a 5-starter, and sandwiched in between, you have Brian Bayo, who does have a lot of promise. Pedro Martinez has been a fanboy of Brian Bayo since he first came up, because Pedro says that he's a mini Pedro. Garrett Whitlock, Cutter Crawford. You also have Nick Pivetta. I just don't really think those guys have an incredibly high ceiling, although I do like Brian Bayo. I think that Whitlock, he's better as a relief pitcher. Same with Tanner Houck. So a lot of pitching questions to start the video. So I guess for some of these teams, they're going to go more storyline based as opposed to asking a question. To me, Volpe is going to see more success in his sophomore season. You're going to have a healthy Aaron Judge in center field, who had his best season ever when he was a primary center fielder. Yeah, he was a center fielder when he had 62 home runs. Just like they posed the question about Alek Manoah bouncing back, my biggest question for the 2024 Yankees, can Carlos Rodon bounce back? If Nasty Nestor is back to being even 90% of what he was, cool. But Carlos Rodon literally went from being a top 5 pitcher in all of baseball to being you and I out there. We were just throwing pitches and hoping that they weren't getting hit for home runs, and in Carlos Rodon's case, they were. So my question for the Yankees, can Carlos Rodon keep the ball on the ground? To me, that is going to be the defining factor on whether or not they're going to have a lot of success, or they're still going to have success regardless. But can they win the World Series without Garrett Cole getting some help in that rotation? I don't think so. Also, Marcus Stroman, can he bounce back after an awful second half? So yeah, kind of the theme of today's video. Is pitching going to hold up this year? This is hilarious. Where is the offense coming from? That is the biggest question for the Guardians, and I fully 100% have to agree. Where is the offense coming from if it's not from J-Ram or Josh Naylor? That is a great question to ask. Now, for me, I love J-Ram, but the guy, he felt so pressured to perform last year. He only hit 200 with runners in scoring position. He was not good in the clutch. Josh Naylor missed a lot of time with some injuries, so can the young guys come up and provide some pop, whether that's Kyle Manzardo, George Valera, this one guy that we got from the Diamondbacks in the Rule 5 draft, Davision De Los Santos. He has insane exit velocities and pop. What about the failed Yankees outfielder Estevan Florial? He has been a god in the minors. Can he figure it out with the Guardians? Hopefully so, because if not, they're going to struggle to score runs all over again because they still think that they can win ball games with bloop base hits and stolen bases. That's not how you operate a franchise. So as I was recording this video, the Royals actually made a trade for John Schreiber of the Boston Red Sox. If I botched his last name, I'm sorry, but they're adding depth again, this time to their bullpen. So when we're talking about a Bobby Witt Jr. who broke out, I mean, he was one of the best players, if not the best player in the second half of last year. Yes, he was that good. Look up the stats. Vinny Pasquantino, he's going to be back and healthy. You added Seth Lugo, and there's another guy that came from the Padres, Michael Wacha, almost had a brain fart. I like the Royals a lot. Are they going to win the AL Central? I have no idea. And to me, that's probably their biggest question. Have they done enough to win the AL Central? The Twins are still very good offensively. They have some questions for their staff. We'll talk about the Twins in a second. Can the Royals win the AL Central? That's my biggest question. And to me, they're kind of a dark horse along with the Tigers. That kind of felt like a cop-out answer, but anyways, let's move on to the Tigers and then the Twins. I've seen enough Colt Keith highlights to think that this guy is going to be very good. The stats speak for themselves as well. I know we do have some big questions about Casey Mize. Is he going to come back and replace the void left by Eduardo Rodriguez? But to me, I'm going to ask the question, can Spencer Torkelson build on the success that we saw him have in the second half of last year? He went from one of the worst first basemen in the league for the first year and a half of his career, and then in the second half, it seems like he really locked in. He found a groove. He was hitting home run after home run. He was getting on base more often. So can Spencer Torkelson become the next Miguel Cabrera? I don't think that's going to happen, but I guess that's what my brain is trying to pose. Can Spencer fill the gap, even 80% of what Miguel Cabrera was back in the day? He's got the talent. He's a former #1 overall pick, and we saw it in the second half. So to me, Reese Olson, the guys that they have in that rotation. But again, for me, can Spencer Torkelson break out all over again? That's my question, because we know we don't have any questions about Javier Baez anymore. He stinks. Will Byron Buxton be able to regularly play center field? That is the biggest question for the Twins. And a fun fact from Fuzzy, did you guys know that Freddie Freeman had more stolen bases last year than Byron Buxton and Mike Trout did combined, even though Buxton and Mike Trout are still top 4% in sprint speed? Byron Buxton has literally been told to not steal bases anymore, just like Mike Trout, because their team thinks that they're made of glass and paper. But because I have confidence in the ceiling of Byron Buxton, I think that he is going to dial it back and still play great defense, maybe not platinum defense like before. I feel like this is a fairly simple question, and it's kind of been the theme of today's video, like we talked about several times. What about the pitching staff for the Minnesota Twins? They lost out on Kenta Maeda. Maybe that's Christmas coming early. Maybe that's addition by subtraction. Sonny Gray is a big-time loss as well. Can Joe Ryan step up? What about that big, tall guy? I'm blanking on his name. I remembered it as I was finishing that sentence. Bailey Ober, that dude's pretty good as well. Can Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez and all of these guys get even better and replace the loss of Sonny Gray? To me, I actually think that they can, because if you forgot how good Pablo Lopez is, let me remind you, he's one of the nastiest pitchers in baseball. The White Sox rebuilding. Fantastic question, because do any of us know what the White Sox are doing? That's my question. I'm probably going to talk about them very briefly in today's video, but that's my question. What are they doing? Are they rebuilding? Are they trying to go for a third place finish in the Central? Are they trying to squeak in for a wild card because they're relying on Moncada and Eloy Jimenez to have bounce back years? I mean, or Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, they have guys with very, very high ceilings. Are they rebuilding and relying on those ceilings, or are they kind of washing their hands and saying, hey, we're just going to play it by ear and hope for the best in 2025? Right now, just don't get injured. What's going on with the White Sox? So as you guys can tell, they're going division by division, so we'll talk about the National League later on in the video. The question for the Angels, how will they fare post Ohtani? And I feel like that's too broad. To me, I feel like they're using a cop-out question mark. I'm going to get real specific. This might sound blasphemous, but I don't really have any worries about their offense. To me, something is telling me that Anthony Rendon is going to bounce back. I can't tell you why. I just have that feeling. Mike Trout, I'm getting the feeling that he's going to stay healthy, and that Zach Neto, Nolan Shanuel, you have Mickey Moniak. They have guys and dudes in that lineup, and also Luis Rengifo is very good as well. Taylor Ward. Is Reed Detmers going to step up and become an ace? Or is it Patrick Sandoval's job to lose? They both regressed after showing some of the highest ceilings and promise in the second half of 2022. Patrick Sandoval was fantastic. He then goes into the WBC, is one of the nastiest pitchers in the entire World Baseball Classic, and then falls off a cliff. So can the lefties, specifically in that rotation of the Angels, actually step up and do their jobs? I'm looking at you, Tyler Anderson. You were a bum last year. You robbed the Angels of money. The Astros are a tough team in terms of their question marks because they don't really have a lot of weaknesses. I guess I'm going to pinpoint one guy, and maybe this is not fair because maybe expectations were too high after he won World Series and ALCS MVPs in 2022. Can Jeremy Pena bounce back? He's always going to be a stud defensively. We don't have any questions about that. But can Jeremy Pena stop chasing pitches outside the zone? Can he get on base more often via the walk? To end the season, I will say he was a little bit better at getting on base with the walk, so the plate discipline did improve. Maybe that was his whole objective to end the year. The bullpen is going to be historically good. When you can go from Ryan Presley to Brian Abreu to Josh Hader, that's almost not fair. So if you're losing by the 7th inning, just pack it in. The game's over. So I have no questions about that. Nah. I am not going to let the A's get away with that. How will the rotation round out? We don't care. Whether it's Ross Stripling or Mason Miller as the closer, pitching questions, offense questions, no. Where will the A's be playing in the future? That's my question. John Fisher, the owner of the A's, is trying to work out a new lease extension for the Coliseum. They might be playing in Las Vegas in the AAA stadium. They could be playing in the AAA stadium in Sacramento. Where are the A's going to be playing in 2024 and beyond? What's going on with that stadium? You guys know I'm a Guardians fan, but I live in Las Vegas. There are so many questions about the future of the A's that have nothing to do with players on the field. That's my question. What are they doing? Just like the White Sox. What are they doing? And honestly, truth be told, not that I think the A's are going to be World Series favorites in 2024, but I think they're going to be better with Alex Wood and Ross Stripling as kind of veterans in that rotation. You call up Darell Hernaiz, and you add other guys to that young, up-and-coming lineup, and also you factor in Shea Langoliers and Esteury Ruiz being really good to end the season. Again, I'm not saying they're going to win 95 games, but could they win 70 and shock a few people? Yeah, probably. So my questions for them are not on the field per se. It's more off the field. So I haven't really agreed with one of their questions in quite some time, but this one I would have to agree with because we know that Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, you have George Kirby, and the other guys in that rotation. I think there's a guy named Wu, and also there's a young guy, I'm forgetting his name, Bryce Miller, there it is. No questions in the world about that. Their bullpen's going to be very good. Can Jorge Polanco step up and actually be serviceable? I think Mariners fans are just asking for a serviceable second baseman after experiencing the Colton Wong and Adam Frazier debacle. Is Luke Raley going to be able to replicate the success that he had last year? He is incredibly fast for a tall guy. He hits the ball very hard. They also added guys like Mitch Garver. They brought back Mitch Haniger. I know you had to give away Jared Kelenic and Eugenio Suarez and Teoscar Hernandez to kind of open up those holes, but I guess those are big names to lose, and Kelenic, Suarez, Teoscar Hernandez, and Tom Murphy, big contributors over the last few years, but again, nothing to scoff at with the addition. I like those pieces a lot. Okay, so here's an interesting one because I agree with their question, but also I feel like we have some other very pertinent questions to talk about as well in terms of the Rangers rotation. But then again, we've already known those question marks about Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, but I guess Wyatt Langford's potential is so monumental that when you factor in him in the same lineup as a Corey Seager and a Marcus Semien and all of the other studs they have in that lineup, adding Wyatt Langford, even though he's a rookie, his stats and his approach, they're so otherworldly. I'm telling you guys right now, of all of the best players and best hitters in baseball, Wyatt Langford can make the most noise because no one's really talking about him aside from diehard baseball fans who study baseball lists like I do. I'm a nerd about this stuff, but maybe if you're casual and you know a thing or two about Langford, that's awesome. Most of you guys don't, but watch out for that kid. But I'll go ahead and say that's not my biggest question mark. My biggest question mark, what is that rotation going to look like after a few months when deGrom gets in there and Scherzer's back and healthy? You also have John Gray, who desperately needs to bounce back. Also, Jordan Montgomery, is he going to come back or not? You have Nathan Eovaldi. My question for the Rangers is easily the pitching. Well, that does it for the American League teams. And coming up first for the NL, the Atlanta Braves. Can Jared Kelenic upgrade one of the most productive lineups in baseball history? Yeah, that's a great question. I think that Kelenic is a fun player, but no. That's not my biggest question. Again, I feel like the question's kind of counterintuitive considering it's already one of the most productive lineups in baseball history. So having Kelenic in there or not, fine. It could be a cherry on top. Is Chris Sale going to be the Chris Old of past or the Chris Sale of the recent? That's my biggest question. So yeah, not really much to talk about in terms of the Braves. We know what they have to offer, and we just have to ponder if Chris Sale is going to be incredibly nasty but give up a ton of runs like last year with Boston, or are we going to see a bounce back? To me, I just feel like that's the easiest perspective and take on the Atlanta Braves, but maybe that's just me. I 100% agree with this question about the Marlins. Are previously injured players ready to contribute? We know that Sixto Sanchez is coming back. He is literally at spring training right now. He does, in fact, exist. I know that Max Meyer, he was a high draft pick, if not like 1 or 2 or 3, something like that a few years ago. He has an incredibly high ceiling as well. Is he going to bounce back from Tommy John surgery? What about Trevor Rogers, who was the 2021 NL Rookie of the Year? Is he going to be able to stay healthy? And if he is healthy, can he actually pinpoint and find that command that he had back in 2021? Big time questions, but also big time answers if they do come back and they are healthy. I have to agree with this one as well for the Mets. How will Pete Alonso react to his walk year? Because I use this as almost a double point. It's a walk year for Pete Alonso, but also a bridge year for the Mets because they have a lot of fill in the gap pieces, guys on 1-year deals, and Pete Alonso, maybe that's a good thing that they have 1-year deals and they don't have a lot on the books for 2025's sake. And Pete thinks that he's going to break out because he just came out and said that he's going to be donating $1,000 to an animal shelter for every home run that he hits. So I hope that he hits 87. Considering it's a walk year, is he going to erupt and have his best season and command as many dollars as he physically can once he becomes a free agent? Or the worst possible situation is he kind of sputters out the gate, and instead of being able to trade him, they kind of have to hold on to him because they can't get the most. But at the same time, if you feel like you can't re-sign Pete Alonso, you do have to trade him. So just praying that Pete Alonso has an amazing first half, and I'm doing that for the puppies and cats and all of the animals' sake because, again, 1 home run is $1,000 to an animal shelter courtesy of Pete Alonso. Nice guy. So for the Nationals, they went with a more broad statement as opposed to a question, but maybe their question is, can their young guys and their prospects actually come up and do some damage pretty soon, talking about 2024, because they've added guys like Jesse Winker, Joey Gallo. So again, a lot of 1-year deals that they're just praying work out in their favor. I have a lot of faith in their farm system because I feel like outfielders Dylan Cruz and also James Wood can be absolute megastars within the next 2 or 3 years. Again, I know it kind of gets boring to talk about the pitching, but I really feel like we have to focus in on what that pitching can do because Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray, that can be a deadly 1-2 punch in that rotation, and hopefully they can get better and better. And also, just a random question, what's going on with Steven Strasburg? There's some beef going on between him and the owner of the Nationals. I think his name is Rizzo. Rizzo literally wants Strasburg to be at spring training and coaching up young players, despite the fact that he's no longer even capable of playing. He's been told by doctors he can't medically play baseball anymore. So yeah, a lot of questions about the Nationals. Can the Phillies run it back and win it all? I guess I have to agree with them because they did not get worse. I mean, they did lose Rhys Hoskins, but they picked up Whit Merrifield. They brought back Aaron Nola, and they're about to extend Zach Wheeler. So they're doing a lot of good things, and they do have the squad, even if they don't add a ton of pieces, to definitely run it back and make a World Series run. So to me, maybe not a ton of question marks. I agree with this. Can they run it back and win it all? Maybe that's the only question we have to ask. For the Brewers, they posed the question, is this a postseason caliber rotation or not? So we all know that they traded Corbin Burns to the Baltimore Orioles. Brandon Woodruff is going to be missing the entirety of 2024. They traded away Adrian Hauser as well. Eric Lauer, I can't remember if he was released or what, but Wade Miley, he's his best when he's a Brewer. He's back. Freddie Peralta is still a stud. Yeah, I fully agree. Is it a postseason starting rotation or not? Because that lineup, now that they have Garrett Mitchell back in there, Sal Frelick is going to be a Swiss Army knife. We saw Christian Yelich add to his bounce back season from 2022. He got even better in 2023. They have Rhys Hoskins. I love William Contreras. The Brewers lineup is not going to have a lot of weaknesses in my opinion, so that pitching, that's their question mark. Yeah, I was wondering this about the Cardinals as well. How much improvement has been made to the pitching staff? Because we know that Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, they have a lot of fun pieces. Mason Wynn is another fun young piece as well. So we feel like for the majority of 2024, their offense and defense should be pretty good. What is that rotation going to look like? They still have Miles Mikolas. They brought in old guys like Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson almost to be kind of old innings eater. They're almost treating them like how the Royals and all of Major League Baseball treats Jordan Lyles. We don't care if you suck. Just come in and eat innings so you can save our bullpen and young guys. Sonny Gray is a massive add. He was the runner-up for the AL Cy Young right behind Garrett Cole. He's been amazing for pretty much his entire career. I hate to say it, Cardinals fans, but I don't think that you did enough on the rotation side of things. You should be upset at your GM. He has been kind of terrible lately. I 100% agree with this question for the Cubs. Is there still a big addition coming? I think that their rotation should be fine. I like Adbert Alzolay, or however you say his last name. Their pitching is always fairly decent, and are they going to bring back Cody Bellinger? That's my biggest question, because at the time of this recording, he has not signed, but neither has any Scott Boras client like Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, and Matt Chapman. They're all just out there in no man's land waiting for someone to sign or for someone to get hurt. Or maybe they move on from Patrick Wisdom and they make Matt Chapman the third baseman, and then they move Christopher Morel to first base or something like that. There's a lot of questions offensively that can be answered with free agency if we're talking about the Cubs. For the Pirates, they asked the question, which second baseman proves the most? Now, I do think that Liover Peguero and Nick Gonzalez have very high ceilings. I really think that they can be solid contributors in the game of baseball. Jared Triolo, he broke out last year. He was very, very good. But no, this is not the correct question to ask. The two biggest questions, and I'm going to go ahead and say two questions for the Pirates because it's my video and I can do what I want. Can O'Neal Cruz stay healthy? And can Paul Skeens teach Mr. Mitch Keller how to be more consistent? And I know that's a lot to ask of a young guy who just got drafted, but I feel like Paul Skeens is one of the more polished prospects I've seen in quite some time. Can he and Mitch Keller team up and figure out how to locate Mitch Keller's sinker? Because he throws a 99-mile-per-hour sinker. He's got incredibly nasty off-speed stuff. He can be one of the best pitchers in baseball along with Paul Skeens in the next few years. They just have to find some consistency for Mr. Keller. And if he does that, the Pirates can be pretty good here soon. Who will make the rotation? Talking about the Cincinnati Reds, and I feel like this is not a great question to ask because Hunter Green is going to be in that rotation. We know that Andrew Abbott is going to be in that rotation because of the success that we saw him have last year. Frankie Montas, Nick Martinez, they're all brought in via free agency, so they're going to get some looks. My question for the Reds, will they finally pull the trigger on trading Jonathan India? Now, they did just come to an agreement for the next 2 years on a contract extension, or maybe they just bought out arbitration. I can't remember exactly what it was. But to me, I feel like they could use Jonathan India as a piece to improve even more in the rotation side of things. So yeah, it's important to ask who's going to make the rotation, but my thing is, can they add to the rotation and lower their risk in terms of their question marks in that rotation by trading away their former rookie of the year in Jonathan India, because he still has some value, but if they can add to the rotation or bullpen using him because they don't really have room for him anymore, I'm cool with that, because Noelvi Marte, he's your third baseman, Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain is the middle of the field, and then you have Christian Encarnacion Strand, who rakes at first base. You don't really have room for India. Trade him. How will the Diamondbacks deal with heightened expectations? You know how they're dealing it? They're having one of the best off seasons of the entire league. They've brought in Eugenio Suarez, they brought in Erod, they brought back Lourdes Gurriel, they've added Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk. And you might be thinking, Jock Peterson's all right, Randall Grichuk really stinks. Randall Grichuk had a 165 OPS plus versus lefties. All they need Randall Grichuk to do is hit every other day against a lefty, and that's it. That's his job. It was only $2 million or something like that. Jock Peterson, he rakes. I love Lourdes Gurriel. He improved the defense. They added Erod to that rotation. To me, I'm probably going to go with the back end of that rotation because I have no doubts about Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and Erod. What about Brandon Pfaadt? What about Ryan Nelson? Because Ryan Nelson has some nasty stuff as well. Or maybe I'm just biased because I played against them in high school. So for me, the back end of that rotation, what's going on with that? Brandon Pfaadt, can you do it this year? Can you actually take that leap like we saw in the playoffs? I hope he can, because he's disgusting. This question was inevitable for the video. How will Yoshinobu Yamamoto adapt to the majors? And according to Freddie Freeman, he took batting practice for the first time against him today in spring training, and he simply said, "I'm glad he's on our team." He called Yoshinobu stuff nasty or crazy, something like that. So, he had a 1.44 ERA and 580 strikeouts over a span of a couple years in the Nippon Professional Baseball League, where he won the Triple Crown. I think he was an MVP and stuff like that. He's 25 years old. He almost reminds me of Tim Lincecum because he has a smaller frame. There is a lot of risk because he's being paid a lot, $325 million, without throwing a single pitch in the majors. So can he step up and be a Yu Darvish or a Tanaka type player? I think he can. I am so happy that they posed this question for the Giants. Is Marco Luciano ready to become the everyday shortstop? Sure, you can ask the easy question, just like Yamamoto and the Dodgers. Can Jung-Hoo Lee, the grandson of the Win, perform in America like he did overseas? But Marco is the biggest question because Brandon Crawford, he's no longer under contract like the article says, and Marco once upon a time was a super mega prospect. Like, he was consistently a top 10 prospect for years and years and years, and then he gets called up and he has not performed well at all, but he can be a star in this league, and if he can become the face of that franchise along with a Jung-Hoo Lee, that would be a lot of fun to watch. So I agree with this 100%. So we have two more teams remaining, the Padres and the Rockies, and they posed the question for San Diego, when are the reinforcements coming? And I can see where they're coming from, because when you have subtractions like Josh Hader, Juan Soto, Trent Grisham, Seth Lugo, and Michael Wacha, those are 5 names that have been massive contributors over the last few years. Now, to me, I feel like adding in a Michael King is going to be a welcome addition. I think that the rotation can still be good with Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove. Don't count those guys out. They're still very talented. My biggest question, and maybe I'm just a fanboy of this guy, can Fernando Tatis Jr. win his first MVP? I will be coming out with a prediction video here soon, but that is my prediction for NL MVP. We saw Ronald come back from that ACL surgery, not look his best in 2022. Then he wipes off all of the rust in 2023, erupts for a monster and historic 2023 MVP season. I think the same is about to happen with Tatis in the batter's box, and the fact that he's playing Gold Glove and Platinum defense, he could put up an 8-9 WAR. I'm calling it right now. And if he does that, the Padres, they're going to have some of their, I hate to say this because it's going to sound cringe, they're going to have their swag back. Ooh, so they went with the youngsters question for the Rockies, not is Chris Bryant going to be able to step up and play like Chris Bryant? That's my question for them. Now, to their credit, I will say that the Rockies do have some fun pieces like Zach Veen. He's got a ton of pop and speed for a tall guy. In a few years, if you have an outfield of Nolan Jones in left field, Zach Veen in center, or maybe Zach Veen in right with Brenton Doyle in center field, almost nothing's going to fall because the outfield is incredible. But can we get our blue-eyed Sweet Prince back to being an MVP? Chris Bryant, I need it, okay? Please. Can we get him back? Please. So that does it for today's video. I had a lot of fun making this. So if you guys want to see more videos like this where we just react to articles and give our opinions and try and recap an offseason or anything you guys want to see, let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Do not forget to subscribe. Okay, bye.